I stood at the front of the banquet hall, watching my colleagues laugh and raise their glasses. 26 years. 26 years of early mornings at the hospital, double shifts, missed holidays, and now, on the evening of my retirement party, with 200 nurses, doctors, and administrators filling the room, I should have felt nothing but joy. But something was wrong. My husband Greg sat at our table, his phone face down beside his plate. Every few minutes, it would light up. He'd glance at it, then at me, then back at his wine. My daughter Melissa kept catching my eye from across the room, her expression tight with concern. "Mom," she'd whispered to me earlier, squeezing my hand, "are you sure you want to do this party? You seem stressed." I'd smiled and told her I was fine. Just tired, just ready to finally rest after all these years of night shifts and emergency calls. But I wasn't fine. And I'd known it for weeks. The champagne had just been poured when Greg stood up. The room quieted. My hospital administrator, Janet, was mid-sentence in her toast to me when Greg cleared his throat loudly. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying over the microphone system. "I have something I need to say." Janet stepped back, confused. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't planned. Greg was supposed to say a few words after the official speeches, not interrupt them. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Greg continued, and I could hear the rehearsed quality in his voice. He'd practiced this, about life, about what I want, about what I deserve. The room had gone completely silent now. 200 pairs of eyes watched him. My hand found the edge of the table, gripping it. "Claire and I have been married for 32 years, he said, looking directly at me. Not at the crowd, at me. 32 years, and I've been patient. I've waited. But Claire, you've let yourself go. You're not the woman I married anymore." I heard gasps around the room. Melissa was on her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I want more from life," Greg said. "I want someone who takes care of themselves, someone younger, someone who hasn't spent 30 years getting old and bitter in a hospital." My face burned, not from shame, from rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. "So I'm asking you, Claire, in front of all these people who know you, to move out of our house. I want a divorce, and I want you gone by the end of the month." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, whispers started. Shocked faces turned toward me. My colleagues, my friends, people I'd worked with for decades, all watching to see what I would do. Greg sat down, looking satisfied, like he'd just delivered a difficult diagnosis and now his work was done. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "Our house?" I said clearly, without the microphone but loud enough that everyone could hear. "You want me to move out of our house?" Greg's expression flickered. "Just for a moment." "That's what I said," he replied, but there was something uncertain in his voice now. "The house at 47 Maple Ridge Drive?" I asked. "The 4-bedroom heritage home with the maple floors and the garden I planted 20 years ago?" "Yes, Claire, our house. Stop being dramatic." I reached into my purse. My hands were steady now. All those years of emergency medicine, of staying calm in crisis, had prepared me for this moment. I pulled out a folded document and held it up. "This is the deed to the house at 47 Maple Ridge Drive," I said. "Would you like to know whose name is on it?" The color was draining from Greg's face. "The house was my grandmother's," I continued, my voice carrying through the stunned silence. "She left it to me when she passed away 30 years ago. Before we got married, I inherited it outright." "Your name has never been on the deed, Greg. Not once in 32 years. I could see him doing the math, his mouth opening and closing. "In fact," I went on, "when we got married, you insisted we keep our finances completely separate. Do you remember that? You said you didn't want to be responsible for my student loans. So we never combined anything. The house stayed in my name. The mortgage I paid off, with my nursing salary, stayed in my name." Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God." "So let me be very clear," I said, looking Greg directly in the eyes. "You don't have a house to kick me out of. You've been living in my house, as my guest, for 32 years. The whispers had turned into murmurs now. I could see phones coming out. People were recording this. Greg stood up, his face red. "You can't just— We're married, Claire. I have rights." "You do have rights," I agreed. "You have the right to pack your belongings and find somewhere else to live, because as of right now, I'm formally asking you to vacate my property." "This is insane," Greg sputtered. "You can't do this here, not in front of everyone." I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "You made the choice to humiliate me publicly, Greg. I'm simply responding in kind. The difference is, I'm telling the truth." That's when Janet, my administrator, stepped forward. She put her hand on my shoulder. "For what it's worth, Claire," she said into the microphone, "you've always been one of the strongest, most dedicated nurses I've ever worked with, and you look absolutely beautiful tonight." Applause started. Slow at first, then building. Within seconds, the entire room was on their feet, clapping. Some people were cheering. Greg looked around wildly, then grabbed his coat and pushed his way toward the exit. The crowd parted for him, but no one stopped clapping. As the door slammed shut behind him, Melissa rushed over and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Mom," she whispered in my ear, "I'm so proud of you." The party continued after that, though the mood had shifted. People kept coming up to me, squeezing my hand, telling me I'd done the right thing. My friend Susan, who'd worked in the ER with me for 15 years, pulled me aside. "I knew something was going on," she said quietly. "I saw him 3 weeks ago at that new coffee shop on Queen Street. He was with a woman, young, mid-30s maybe. They were very close." My stomach turned. "Did you get her name?" Susan shook her head. "But I took a picture, just in case you needed it." "I'm sorry, Claire. I should have told you sooner." "Show me," I said. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos. There was Greg, sitting across from a blonde woman in yoga clothes. His hand was covering hers on the table. They were both laughing. "Do you recognize her?" Susan asked. I looked closer at the image, and then I saw it. The necklace the woman was wearing, a small gold pendant in the shape of a stethoscope. "That's Rebecca," I said slowly. "Rebecca Turner. She works in physiotherapy at the clinic, attached to the hospital." Susan's eyes widened. "The one who always asked you for career advice?" I nodded. Rebecca had been hired 2 years ago. She'd come to me multiple times, asking about work-life balance, about managing difficult patients, about how I'd built such a respected career. I'd mentored her, given her guidance, and apparently, she'd been sleeping with my husband. The rage that had been ice in my veins earlier started to thaw into something hotter. "I need to make a phone call," I told Susan. I stepped out into the hotel lobby and dialed my lawyer. Tom Brennan had handled my grandmother's estate 30 years ago. He was semi-retired now, but still took calls from old clients. "Claire," he answered on the third ring. "Congratulations on your retirement. How's the party?" "Interesting," I said. "Tom, I need you to file divorce papers first thing Monday morning. And I need you to send Greg a formal eviction notice for my property." There was a pause. "What happened?" I gave him the short version. By the end, Tom was laughing. "He actually did it at your retirement party? In front of 200 witnesses?" "He did." "Well, this should be straightforward then. Given that the property is yours, purchased before marriage, and you kept finances separate, he has no claim to it. He'll have 30 days to remove his belongings under Ontario tenancy law, but that's it. And the divorce? Even simpler. No shared assets to divide. You'll need to sort out any joint accounts or credit cards, but from what you're telling me, there won't be much. This is going to be one of the easiest divorces I've ever filed." I felt something release in my chest. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion. "There's one more thing," I said. "I have reason to believe he's been having an affair with a woman named Rebecca Turner. She works at the physiotherapy clinic connected to Toronto General." "Do you want to pursue that angle?" Tom asked carefully. I thought about it, about Rebecca asking me for advice while sleeping with my husband, about Greg rehearsing his speech, planning to humiliate me. "No," I said finally. "I just want him gone. I don't need to punish him. He's already lost everything that mattered." When I came back into the banquet hall, the party had transformed into something else entirely. Someone had changed the music. My colleagues were dancing. Janet was at the microphone, leading everyone in an off-key but enthusiastic rendition of I Will Survive. Melissa pulled me onto the dance floor. We danced together, mother and daughter, while 200 of my colleagues cheered. Later, as the party wound down, my friend Angela from oncology sat down beside me. "Can I tell you something?" she said. "My husband left me 5 years ago. Said the same things Greg said to you. That I'd let myself go. That he wanted someone younger." I squeezed her hand. "And you know what I learned?" Angela continued. "It was never about me. It was about him being terrified of getting old, of being ordinary, of looking in the mirror and seeing wrinkles and gray hair and realizing that life doesn't last forever." "Greg's 63, I said. "He's got wrinkles too. And he's losing his hair." "Exactly," Angela said. "But it's easier to blame you than to accept his own aging. It's easier to chase after some young woman and pretend that makes him young again." I looked around the room at all these women I'd worked with, women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, women who'd delivered babies at 3 in the morning and held dying patients' hands and fought insurance companies and saved lives. We all had wrinkles, we all had gray hair, we were all aging, and we were all absolutely magnificent. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, and Greg was gone. He'd come back during the night and taken some clothes, his toiletries, his laptop, but he'd left most of his belongings behind. Melissa came over with coffee and bagels. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Lighter," I said. And it was true. The weight I'd been carrying for months, maybe years, had lifted. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "This is Rebecca. I heard what happened last night. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was going to do that." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I blocked the number without responding. There was nothing Rebecca could say that I needed to hear. Over the next few days, the story spread. Not because I told it, but because 200 people had witnessed it. By Monday morning, it was all over the hospital staff forums. By Tuesday, someone had posted a video clip to social media, and it had gone viral. "Woman confronts cheating husband at her own retirement party," read the headline. You won't believe what she said next. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets wanted interviews. My story had struck a chord with people, especially women my age who'd been through similar betrayals. But I didn't give interviews. I didn't need to. The story spoke for itself. Tom filed the divorce papers on Monday as promised. On Tuesday, Greg called me. "Claire, we need to talk," he said. "I made a mistake." "Yes, you did," I agreed. I was scared. About getting old, about retirement, about becoming irrelevant. Rebecca made me feel young again. "That's not my problem to solve, Greg. Can't we work this out? See a counselor? I'll move back in, we can." "No," I said simply. "The divorce papers have been filed. You have 30 days to collect your remaining belongings from the house. After that, anything left behind will be donated. Claire, please. I love you. I've always loved you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have tried to humiliate me in front of everyone I've worked with for 26 years. If you loved me, you wouldn't have blamed me for the natural process of aging while you yourself are 63 years old with a bald spot and a beer belly." He was quiet for a moment. "I know I hurt you." "Yes, you did. But you also freed me. So thank you for that." I hung up. A week later, I was sitting in my garden when Melissa came over with news. "Rebecca broke up with Dad," she said, trying not to smile. "Did she now?" Apparently, once he didn't have a house to offer, and once everyone at the hospital knew he was a cheating jerk, she lost interest pretty quickly. I thought about that. About Greg, who'd been so confident he could trade me in for a younger model, now finding himself alone at 63 with nowhere to live. "Where's he staying?" I asked. "Some apartment his friend is renting to him month to month. It's a bachelor. He has to share a laundry room with 6 other units." I felt a small, mean part of me smile at that, but mostly, I just felt tired. "He keeps texting me," Melissa said, "asking if I'll talk to you, asking if there's any way to fix this." "What do you tell him?" "That he made his choice. And now he gets to live with it." Smart girl, I thought. I'd raised her well. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Greg tried to contest it, tried to claim he deserved some portion of the house's value, tried to argue that his contributions to household expenses over 32 years entitled him to compensation. The judge disagreed. "Mr. Holloway," the judge said, "you specifically requested separate finances when you married Miss Holloway. You've maintained separate bank accounts, separate credit cards, and separate assets throughout your marriage. The property in question was inherited by Miss Holloway before your marriage and has remained solely in her name. You have no legal claim to it." Greg left the courthouse looking older than I'd ever seen him. Defeated, I left feeling free. 6 months after my retirement party, I was sitting on my back porch with Melissa and my granddaughter Emma. Emma was 7, obsessed with dinosaurs, and absolutely fearless. "Grandma," she said, "why did Grandpa leave?" I looked at Melissa, who nodded slightly. She'd told me it was my decision what to tell Emma. "Because Grandpa was scared of getting old," I said honestly. "And instead of dealing with that fear, he tried to blame me for it. He tried to make it my fault that we were both aging." "That's silly," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Everyone gets old. That's how bodies work." "You're absolutely right," I said. "It is silly, but sometimes grown-ups make silly decisions when they're scared." "Are you scared of getting old, Grandma?" I thought about that, about my wrinkles and my gray hair and my body that had carried a baby and worked countless night shifts and was now, finally, allowed to rest. "No," I said. "I'm not scared anymore." Emma nodded, satisfied, and went back to her dinosaur book. Melissa reached over and squeezed my hand. A year after my retirement, I ran into Greg at the grocery store. We'd managed to avoid each other completely until then, but now there he was in the produce section, looking at tomatoes. "Claire," he said, surprised. "Greg," I replied evenly. We stood there for an awkward moment. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "How have you been?" he asked. "Good," I said. And it was true. I've been volunteering at the hospital, mentoring new nurses, and I've been traveling. I went to Portugal last month. "Portugal," he repeated. "You always wanted to go there." "Yes, I did." Another pause. "I'm sorry," Greg said suddenly, "for everything. You didn't deserve what I did to you." I looked at him, really looked at him, at this man I'd spent 32 years with, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not love, just a distant, quiet neutrality. "No, I didn't," I agreed. "But I learned something important from it." "What's that?" "That my value was never dependent on you, or on being married, or on looking a certain way. I spent 32 years trying to be enough for you, and the whole time, I was already enough. I just didn't know it yet." Greg's eyes were wet. "I wish I'd understood that before I lost you." "So do I said. "Take care of yourself, Greg." I walked away, leaving him standing there among the tomatoes. When I got home, I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. At my silver hair that I'd stopped dyeing, at the lines around my eyes from years of smiling, at this body that had worked so hard, for so long, to help others. I thought about what Angela had told me at the retirement party, about how men sometimes blame their wives for their own fear of aging. And I thought about all the women I knew who'd been through the same thing, left by husbands who wanted to feel young again, as if youth were something you could buy or borrow or steal from someone else. Greg never understood something I'm only now fully able to say out loud. Youth isn't the reward. It isn't the prize at the end of a life well lived. It's just a season temporary, fragile, and always moving forward whether we want it to or not. We all pass through it. And if we're lucky, we leave it behind. What actually matters is what comes after. The years that teach you who you are when you're no longer trying to impress anyone. The wisdom you earn the hard way. The compassion you develop when life breaks you open. The strength you build quietly, piece by piece, after disappointment, after sacrifice, after loss. For 32 years of marriage, I spent my time trying to stay enough for Greg. Young enough, pretty enough, interesting enough. I treated my life like a constant audition, as if I were always standing under a bright light while he sat in judgment. I learned to read his moods the way people read weather forecasts. I learned which version of myself he liked best, and I worked hard to become her again and again, even when I was exhausted, even when I didn't recognize the woman I saw in the mirror. And still, no matter what I did, it always felt like I was failing some invisible test. If I gained weight, it was proof I'd stopped trying. If I looked tired, it was proof I'd stopped caring. If I talked too much, I was annoying. If I talked too little, I was boring. It didn't matter how much I gave him my time, my patience, my body, my youth, my energy, my forgiveness. Somehow, it was never quite enough. There was always another expectation waiting around the corner, another standard I was supposed to meet, another version of myself I was supposed to become. And for a long time, I believed that was normal. I believed that was love. But the truth is, the test itself was flawed. The test was a lie. Because the real question was never, am I enough for him? That question kept me small. It kept me afraid. It kept me working endlessly for approval I could never truly earn because it was never really about me. The question should have been, is he enough for me? And when I finally asked myself that honestly, without excuses, without fear, the answer came so clearly it almost shocked me. No, he hadn't been enough for a very long time. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not as a partner, not as someone who valued what I brought into the world. He wasn't enough because he didn't see me. Not really. He saw my youth, my appearance, my usefulness, and when those things began to change, he treated it like a betrayal. As if aging were something I did to him. As if time were my fault. As if every wrinkle was a failure and every birthday was a warning sign. When Greg left, people expected me to fall apart. Some of them even waited for it, as if heartbreak would confirm the story they believed, that women lose value when men stop choosing them. But something unexpected happened. I didn't collapse. I woke up. It was like I had been holding my breath for decades without realizing it, and suddenly, I could breathe again. The silence in my house didn't feel lonely, it felt peaceful. It felt like freedom. One afternoon, I picked up my phone and texted Melissa. "Want to help me plan a trip to Scotland? I've always wanted to see the Highlands." She replied immediately, "Yes. When do we leave?" I laughed out loud, not a polite laugh, not a forced one, but the kind that comes from deep in your chest, the kind that reminds you you're still alive. And for the first time in years, I started searching for flights with excitement instead of fear. My life didn't end when Greg left. In many ways, it finally began. And that's what I wish I could tell every woman who has ever been told she let herself go. Every woman who has been replaced by someone younger. Every woman who has been made to feel like her worth is tied to her waistline, her face, or the number of candles on her birthday cake. Your value does not decrease with age. It grows. Every experience makes you deeper. Every challenge makes you stronger. Every heartbreak teaches you something you can't learn any other way. You become richer not in the shallow sense of beauty, but in the real sense of character. And any man who can't see that isn't worthy of you. So here is what I learned from the disaster of my retirement party, from the humiliation, from the betrayal, and from the rebuilding. Own your assets. Know your worth. Keep your financial independence. And never, ever carry someone else's fear of aging as your burden. Because you're not letting yourself go. You're letting go of anyone who cannot appreciate the incredible woman you've become. And that is the most powerful thing you can do.